And here we are back with Luke Lohr, host of the Xbox Expansion Pass himself yet again. What is happening, my friend?
Ainsley Bowden, it is so good to see you.
Did you start with my full name?
Yeah, you may have noticed that is how I operate with people in general, is their first and last name. I do it in my daily life all the time. I call my wife by her full name often. It's how I like to start introductions. It's your name. That's okay.
You call your wife by her full name?
She has her doctorate and she's a physical therapist, so you're not supposed to say doctor, but I refer to her as Dr. Hillary Bauer all the time. I throw in it's her maiden name. Obviously, she's changed her last name to mine, but all the time. And if anybody ever says hello to her, I always make them say doctor as well. She can't stand it. She can't stand it.
Well, if that's not a theme for how this show is going to go today, welcome.
Thank you for having me, man. I've been listening to some of the industry perspective episodes with Lord Cognito. I know you had to do one with Joseph Moran, and that had to be.
I did, yeah. He paid me, so I figured, it was more of a trade-off thing.
Yeah, you got to keep the lights on. I get it. But thank you for having me. I appreciate being here, part of your illustrious crowd that has joined the show, and so I'm looking forward to it, man.
Yeah. Looking forward to sit down. I mean, it goes without saying, we joke around a lot. We're now doing a different show together in Cast Co-op, and just love chatting with you. So always appreciate your perspective. XCP is awesome. And this will be fun. But I think, what I like to do when we start these kind of conversations is really give the audience more of a reflection on, how you got here. So let's go ahead and back up, which is going back now, 50, 60 years. What got you into gaming initially? Where did you start? Was there someone in your family that got you into it? Just how did the journey begin?
The journey began when I was not behaving for my mother during a summer break or whatnot. I was a very rambunctious, difficult child to raise.
I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah. Sensory overload all the time. So I was always just going nuts. And she pulled her old Atari. She and my father, incredible people, both hippies, though, in their own right, would play Atari back in the day, and they had a Star Wars game. And so she put that on to just try to occupy my time.
Okay.
And the ability to press a button and manipulate something and then see a reaction from that on screen changed everything. I was moving a couple pixels around, but in my mind, I was in a speeder bike taking down AT-ATs on Hoth. It was Empire Strikes Back, and it was the coolest thing in the world. Game. I think it was. I go back and look at footage, and I'm like, I don't know.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. Keep it in your memory.
But, growing up, my parents were not sold on video games as a thing. Like, they had that for themselves way back when, but then post-children, it was always books and reading and outside time. And we did not have video games in our household for a long time. Oh. I just knew that I loved them, and I would beg and want and plead. And for a long time, it was not the case. I think the first system, if you would call it that, I got was a Game Boy.
Okay.
And it was green. So that gives you an idea of when they came out, right? At the first, they were all the gray bricks.
Yep.
So I ended up with a Game Boy. And then from there, I was always a system or two behind because I had to save up my own money. My parents weren't big supporters of doing that. That we were financially strapped, or I should rephrase that. We were not financially strapped, but they put their money into making sure that I could play soccer. I could have nice clothes or something like that, right? Never prioritizing video games. And the first system I was able to get that was current at the time versus all my friends was a PlayStation. Okay. And I went to Target, Ains, fully expecting, I saved up all the money, done all the math, including sales tax, to get a Nintendo 64 and Rogue Squadron. And that was it. That was all I was going to be able to afford.
Yeah.
But I wanted one so badly. The customer service rep at Target at the time convinced me and my family to get a PlayStation.
Wow, she tossed you out of the N64 to get a PS1. The old console wars, huh?
That at the time, yeah. And you have to remember, at the time, PlayStation was significantly cheaper in terms of games, like because they were on CD based. They were like
cartridge, yeah.
Right. So we were able to get 2 games, Rebel Assault and FIFA.
Okay.
And I was in heaven. I loved it. The demo discs were back in the day.
Yes.
So I thought I had thousands of games in my mind. So I started subscribing to OXM and Man, it was just incredible. But I have always loved games and the ability to be transported and interact with a story. Uh, I'm enamored with stories, Ains. I love reading. I love comic books. I love movies.
Okay.
And I love video games more than anything because you can interact and be part of the story. And so that was how it started.
That's it's not too dissimilar, really. I mean, I started with Atari, more of a family thing. And then I remember, it's funny you said to kind of distract you or kind of occupy you, because I vividly remember when my mom first bought the Sega Master System for me, which I've talked about many times. But I vividly remember her telling my sister's 10 years older than me, this will occupy him. And so I think it was one of those things where it was just like, you can place that in front of us and, they get some free time at the time. That's what it was thought of. Mm-hmm. But that changed that's all I did from that point forward. So it sounds pretty similar. Mm-hmm. Very cool. So what would you say then? What would you have to pick out as like a favorite memory? If you think about gaming over the past, since you grew up through that area you just talked us through, you have like something nostalgic that jumps out to you or sticks out to you?
I have a couple that stick out. The first was, as I said, my parents did not prioritize video games, and which meant that anytime I wanted one, it was a conversation with my father, and I had to convince him. And at the time, there was a lot of research saying that video games might be bad for you. My mother, being an educator, really held back on that. And I was very impressionable, and still am, perhaps even at 35. And I remember Christmas Day opening up a gift from my parents, and in it were 3 cartridges for the Nintendo Entertainment System: Top Gun, Super Mario Brothers 3, Oof. And for the life of me, I can't remember the other one, but it was a non-issue for that.
Top Gun is like, I remember playing how hard that game was. Like, you could never accomplish anything in that game. You'd take off, you'd be dead in like 30 seconds.
Yes. But it was so significant because at the time, this was when Nintendo 64 had just hit the market.
Okay.
That's how far back I was. We had a Nintendo because my grandfather had one in his closet and gave it to us.
Okay.
But my mother had to go stand in line at a pawn shop to get it. And that was a big deal for her. That it was like not a good part of town, not a safe place to be.
Sure.
And for her to have gotten those, and I was young and I was smart enough and still young enough, but I connected the dots that this was a big deal that she went and did that. So opening up that and seeing that that gift and the amount of like emotional effort it would have taken for my family to do that for me was a big deal. And then over the course of convincing them to let me buy a current system, and even hearing my father amusedly say, "Are we going to go get your toy today?" It's not a toy.
It's not a toy, Dad.
Right. But then they let me do that. And one of my best memories of my parents, my little brother and myself gaming, we were on a trip to Disney World and family vacation, and my parents aren't gamers. They're not really into it. But we did a FIFA tournament where my brother and my mom were on a team. My father and I were on a team. And that was just one of the coolest memories ever. And I lost somehow. My brother beat me. It was just really fun. And those, I think, are the memories that stick out the most, was having them be part of my hobby, even briefly, was really cool.
That is cool. It's funny how that translates again, because my mom never played any games ever. My dad, I remember him taking me to the arcade when I was super little, like 3-4 years old, but he never really did anything outside of that. Yeah, that's definitely interesting. So then, what do they think of what you do now? Obviously, gaming's a big part of your life. You've got the Xbox expansion pass. I'm sure they know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming, I should say, they know you've become kind of a big gamer and in this space. What do they think of it?
I think there's a more respect to it. Certainly, they would never downplay my dreams, provided it was not at the expense of my well-being. And that is to say, if I was ever gaming but unemployed and struggling or not trying to get my life together, they were always very down on it, and they never truly understood it. I can remember being at home in my youth and playing video games and be like, go outside, do something constructive.
Yep.
I'm like, this is constructive. I don't want to be outside. It's sweaty out there. And had I not been a capable athlete, and then as I gotten older, held down the job and whatnot, I think they would look at it a little bit differently. But because I'm where I am, I think they look on it rather fondly, and they're like, oh, that's cool. Like now when they come over and they come up into my game room and they see the statues and whatnot, it's fine because I have other things in order. And I think also the mindset for gaming has permutated into the very casual mediums of entertainment. It's now the biggest entertainment industry, by far eclipsing anything else secondary. Music and movies combined don't even reach the profit margins in gaming and the amount of people that game. And so now is a very different story, but 25 years ago,
Sure,
there was just not the level of understanding there. But they are always wonderful human beings, supportive, and they just like to see me happy. And I found a marriage that lets me do that. I found a place and an audience that lets me do that, and that's the trick to it all.
yeah, you know? yeah, absolutely. It is funny, the difference, the stark contrast. I was talking with someone the other day who I think they said their first system was a PS2. And so obviously completely different era from me.
That's just offensive when they say that.
It certainly puts things into perspective. But it's hard to explain to that generation. Kind of really, my son is about to be 16 this year, right? And he remembers playing. I think the earliest thing he would remember is really the GameCube. And that's because, I obviously had everything, right? Mm-hmm. But it's really hard to explain to him the impact of the consoles like the NES, right? Or what first playing Super Mario 64 meant. And how video games were looked at, especially in the 80s or even the 70s, if you're back in the Atari days. So it's just, it's such a stark contrast to the kids growing up now, with gaming just being a mainstream thing. Every kid games. Every kid.
And they don't know what memory cards are.
No,
right?
They don't know a lot of things.
You know what a rumble pack is?
No.
Children.
When they can't get online and talk to friends, they're like, what is going on around here?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah. You don't remember the days of, your sister picking up the phone line and disconnecting your 4-hour Ultima online session. Damn it.
That had to hurt.
But different era. So then at some point, you've talked through kind of up to almost now. I mean, within the more modern era, but at some point then obviously a love for Xbox developed. So where did that really come into play then?
The love for Xbox came about in college, through Xbox 360, Gears of War.
Yes.
I was enamored by the footage of Gears of War, thrilled by it. I was very anti-Halo at the time.
Come on now.
Which is all the more amusing given that, my background is all Halo everything. But at the time I was
live and learn.
Right. You do, and you grow and you adapt. But I wanted one so badly. This was when the Red Ring of Death was prominent, and this was right in the early days of the 360. But I went and sold plasma for weeks in college, picked up odd jobs in college, tried to save up money to get an Xbox 360, and I got it off of somebody there who, like another student there. And the first time Xbox Live was a thing, trying to figure out voice chat was hard to do. Trying to figure out how to make things work is like you had to change the IP address of and the MAC address actually for your 360 to match your laptop so the school network would let you on. So you had to make the school network think that your 360 was your computer. But once you figured that out, it was just this whole new world. And I was still thrilled by the idea of demos. I downloaded all the demos on the 360 because back in the day, if you had a game available digitally, you had to have a demo as well. Fell in love with Gears of War, fell in love with Crackdown 1. That system was special to me. And I was coming off of two wonderful systems in the PlayStation 2 and the GameCube, which just had incredible catalogs of games. But that 360 was special. That opened my eyes to some incredible Xbox stuff. And that was one heck of a generation. 2007 was one of the best years in gaming ever. 2010 was pretty great. Yeah, and I remember you saying that recently on one of your shows.
Yep.
But it was just a wonderful system, and that love for Xbox waned pretty heavily. Connect 1.0 and the Xbox One launch, I was out. I had switched over to PlayStation 3 at the very end and PlayStation 4 as my primary systems for a good long while.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I do not subscribe to the idea of console or brand allegiance. I subscribe to the idea that we should go where we're most valued as customers and where our dollar travels the furthest for what we want to do. And PlayStation really, really did a great job with that in the early days of the PlayStation 4, whereas Microsoft did not. So I was out.
Damn. So, a few years from now when Phil Spencer retires and Don Matrix put back in charge and, you're going to be ready to drop Xbox should it all happen again?
The PlayStation expansion pass is on. It's ready to go.
The artwork's already there.
It's ready. It's ready. But no, I think it's important to feel valued as a customer and go where you're going to be appreciated and your dollar travels far. I didn't have a lot of dollars for a long time. You and I were talking before the show about different life circumstances. Well, there was a period where I was unemployed, trying to make it as a journalist, where I was working at GameStop, where my buddy paid my rent. I mean, there was a window of time where that happened. And for that reason, I was gaming on older stuff, or I was playing things that my dollar traveled far. And being a teacher, single in a new city at one point, I didn't eat at the end of the month. So whatever indie game was on PlayStation Plus, that was my jam.
Yeah.
For the early days of PlayStation 4.
Yeah, it goes to show you. And I think that probably speaks to somewhat your love for demos too, because I've been there where you can't afford to buy a game, right? And a game demo is a lifesaver. It's something new to play. I don't care how short it is. I'll play it 100 times.
Oh yeah.
If it's entertaining, it just kind of keeps you going.
Absolutely.
It's funny. I actually, a little side note, I actually went back into, I told this anecdote somewhere, I don't remember where, but in 1999, when Dreamcast came out, I wrote in and got Letter of the Month in the official Dreamcast magazine.
Nice.
And I still have the duffel bag and copies of that magazine and other things they sent me for winning that. It was a little prize package. But in there, I store my original Dreamcast magazines, the original OXMs, like literally issue 1, 2, 3, 4. And I have tons of demo discs still stacked up in my storage from those days.
Cool. That's so cool. I used to have that. I believe they are gone. I believe my parents purged that from the old house. But I used to have a very similar type thing where all the demos were stacked up. And I rescued some old PlayStation 1 games that are still sitting in my car, Rebel Assault 2 and Wipeout 3 and Star Trek Invasion, because you can never find that game ever if you ever had to find it. They sit in my car just to have good memories of, just so I can see them. Just cause.
Great memories, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've talked a lot. We've done a lot of shows together. You're always on my show. XCP's been going for a while now. So you talked about your love for Xbox and the 360. And by the way, I firmly agree with you that the 360 is one of the greatest consoles of all time. I don't even know how anyone can debate it, to be honest with you. No. That console did so much for the gaming industry that it's almost unfathomable. Like I wrote an article on Xbox Live a few years ago looking at the history of the evolution. And the 360 did so much that was later copied or emulated in other areas, even from PlayStation. I mean, trophies, PSN, all these things were a product of Xbox initially in the console space, which I've always found fascinating. But regardless of that, when did you actually start XCP? Because I went back and I was like, I don't really know when your first episode was, thinking about it. And what kind of made you think sitting there? Are you looking it up right now?
Sure am, Ains.
So while you're looking it up, it's kind of a two-parter thing. Is like, what made you take that love of Xbox and gaming and say, I really want to do a one-person kind of thought-provoking podcast on Xbox where I can invite people from around the gaming industry and whatnot to chat with me.
The first episode of XCP debuted in the first week of October 2019.
Okay.
And at the time of us recording this, I'm 77 episodes in.
Nice.
It was and is a solo show because prior to that, I had been co-host on a show called the Xbox Drive, which is a fairly popular show in its own right now. It's hosted by two Canadians now, Ryan Turford and Sean Capri. Sean was and does run that. That is Sean's show. But for a good while, it was our show. It was his. He brought me on as a co-host, and we shared responsibility in that. And we had connections with Xbox Canada because Sean is Canadian. And so we were able to travel to E3 2019. One of the best memories, best 3 days like segment of my life ever by far. My wedding wasn't that great, guys. Knock it off. But I that was why I was doing an Xbox show there and co-hosting there. Sean and I had a parting of ways, a falling out of sorts at the time. He's a great human being. We wanted different things for the show. I wanted a bit more of a serious show like XEP, where I could do interviews and stuff. He wanted a more jovial, silly, funny show.
Sure.
A bit akin to Cast Co-op, oddly enough. But I wasn't getting my fix for being serious and exercising those journalistic muscles that I enjoy flexing from time to time because I have a history in journalism. And so we parted ways. It was frustrating and it hurt, kind of like a divorce, right? But then the type that you look back on, and you realize, oh, we're both better now, and it's great and good for you and good for me, and we're all happy. So the idea of doing it solo was that I didn't want anyone to have control or influence over what I wanted to do. And it was a bit of a pride thing as well. I can do this on my own aspect. I'm embarrassed by the trivialness or perhaps the pettiness, you might say, for the foundations of it. But it really is the true reason. I wanted to prove that I could do it on my own. And I had no idea it would last as long as it has and be as appreciated as it is. I have an incredible audience that has been kind enough to review on iTunes and check out the show and all the jazz that helps a podcast survive. 77 episodes in, I've interviewed some incredible people, met some wonderful people. I've built connections with people like, Seasoned Gaming, yourself, and meeting so many other great people was awesome. And so doing a solo show is difficult in many ways because you have to carry the conversation and have to have your notes and be ready to do everything and be able to talk for 30, 40 minutes, which sometimes is very difficult. And sometimes like today is very, very easy. But I also didn't have to worry about anyone else's schedule.
Yeah,
I could do it when I wanted to. If my anxiety was bad that day, if I was frustrated or whatnot, something came up, I can work around it. And the pros and cons have led to a show that I'm actually quite proud of in XEP. And I think it's something that I would put up there with some of the better Xbox podcasts out there in my mind. And I hope to one day to kind of get the attention of the big dogs, just to be able to bump elbows with them a little bit, just for fun.
Yeah, and I hope that happens for sure. I think it would be deserved. But it's interesting, man, as we're talking here, and we've known each other for a while now and talked quite a bit, but the parallels in how we got started on a lot of these things or in our lives is a little uncanny, honestly, because I don't talk about it often, but Seasoned Gaming was spawned out of my love for gaming, obviously, and I was writing elsewhere about it, and I turned it into a blog, which blossomed into a site. But when it was created, my whole thing was, this is going to be mine because I've run companies in the past, not gaming, other things, in the past with friends or people I've known, and it just hasn't worked out. You get a difference of direction, you get a difference of mindset, and then you can't come to some sort of, natural path forward, and it creates problems, right? So I was like, well, as many people as I would love to get over on Seasoned Gaming and to contribute and to talk with and everything, the final kind of product is going to be what I want it to be. Right. So that's interesting. Man, that's funny. So 77. So you got any big guests you want to tease coming up soon or?
Tease coming up. I've actually been doing some connections today. I'm going to be talking to the people from Limited Run Games at some point coming up in their ideas of game preservation and what they want to do, why they are so steadfast on creating physical versions of games that might be mediocrely popular to a niche audience kind of thing. Among that was the question of, why don't you do this for Xbox? Why don't you have Xbox games? Yeah. And I had a listener write in on that one. And so I told them that I was going to share, right? I was like, do you have an official PR answer for this? Because I am going to share it. And they're under NDA on many cases, but they would love to, right? I'm interested in that story and finding that out. who else is coming on? Asper Media, the people that kind of have been repurposing a lot of those older Xbox and PlayStation games and 64 games.
Yeah.
Like the Star Wars Racer.
Stubbs the Zombie?
Stubbs the Zombie. Yep, that's the most recent one they did at the time of recording. And then we've got the Republic Commando. They're putting out on PlayStation. Okay. And I'm very curious as to why they go to some platforms, not others. It's very interesting to see how that happens. To say the least. And yeah, there's a few more in the works. I mean, I could take you down the list, but they don't always come to fruition. That's one of the interesting things about trying to get people on a show for an interview purpose. Sometimes it falls apart at the end. Sometimes you do the interview and then they say, you know what, I don't feel comfortable, or this thing has changed on our end. Please hold off on that. And I could still run it. We did the work, but that would not help anything. No, that would burn bridges. And right. I'm not the guy to leak things or share stuff. That's not the vibe for XEP.
Yeah. Yeah, no, in the same boat. And I'm finding, this has never been this. I only really started more recently in terms of these one-on-one chats, and I'm really enjoying them. But I'm already finding some of the same things, and it's similar to getting guests on any podcast as well. Yeah, it can be a challenge at times, but it's also a lot of fun and rewarding when it works out. So, going back to Xbox, it kind of works out. You said you're on your 77th episode. You've been doing this for a year and a half, give or take. The timing just seems to be a natural fit with the evolution of Xbox itself, because, 2018, I think, is when they kind of turned that corner and the conversation started to change, as you and I have talked about many times. 2019, 2020, obviously the pandemic impacted that a bit, but the direction Xbox is heading right now, we've talked about extensively, as have many, is not only unique, but it's fascinating to watch, because I think they're kind of charting a path that has not been charted in the console space. And I think, if you're talking about an Xbox centric show that you do, it just feels like there's going to be endless content for the ongoing future. We run, as you well know, the Bitcast is an all platform show. And we try to cover everything, and we do. But I actually told Dan last week, I said, I'm really, really trying not to make every episode sound like it's Xbox centric, but they're the only one that have big news every week. Like, I don't know what else I'm supposed to do. So it kind of fits as a natural alignment with where you are right now. It seems perfect.
It does. And I think that's for a couple different reasons, some of which you mentioned and some of which we could expound on. If you look at our big three, Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox, Nintendo has very much turned themselves away from the idea of a console war. They've for a long time now, they've been taking themselves away from the tech race, and they've marketed themselves to children exclusively. There are not games for any mass appeal to an older audience on Nintendo platforms. That is not to say adults don't play them. For goodness sakes, you and I and many others, we love playing like kiddie-looking games, the new Marios, Mario Kart, stuff like that. But they are marketing to younger generations, and they turn themselves into and think of themselves very much as a toy company. And respect to them wholeheartedly. They won't get the respect in the console podcasting space per se, but when it comes to sales numbers and charts and purchases, they're rocking to the beat of their own drum. There's a DS under the seat of every minivan. Like there's always a DS in there next to some crumbs, and these kids are playing games, and that just seems to be how it is. So cheers to them for that. Sony, for their part, has taken this very traditional model of we'll make exclusive games for exclusive hardware, and that's how it's going to be. And they've been forced to respond in a couple different cases from Microsoft and other competitors to adjust that a little bit. Blended generations, recognizing they won't have enough PS5 units available to sell, so they need to have things on both platforms, digital distributions and whatnot. Not having a subscription service like Game Pass. They seem to be very steadfast in a traditional model, and it has served them well. Microsoft was getting trounced during the early Xbox One generation, deservedly so, I might add, and had to reinvent themselves or wither away and die. There's no way they could have limped along like Stadia did at its launch for an extended period of time. Microsoft would have axed the Xbox division entirely, sold off whatever assets were worth it, and it had been done. But they doubled down on reinvention. Of course, the Spencer leadership is noted for that. And it is his leadership that brings us so many news stories each and every week, it seems, because there are initiatives that were put into place years ago that are only now starting to pay dividends. And it's those initiatives that put him next to Satya Nadella, who is in charge of that $1.8 trillion market cap or whatever it is. Yeah, small company. And that's the big difference between them. People often talk about Microsoft's money, and they're not going to spend all their money on Xbox. However, they've now got Phil Spencer at the table next to Nadella and discussing
who's their CFO.
Right. And there's profit margins in play, and gaming is, as we talked about at the top of the show, one of the most profitable industries by far of any other industry in entertainment. So why wouldn't they double down and invest? And not only invest, but invest in the future, cloud distribution, recognizing subscription models, values within that. The idea that physical sales don't really matter all that much anymore. I have a brand new tablet, courtesy of a stimulus check, and that thing has a beautiful OLED screen. I can play Xbox games on my tablet with touch controls, and it works well, which shocked me, right? That was just weird. I'm playing Streets of Rage 4, and it's working perfectly. But not only that, just have a controller, and I can go to my parents' house, and I'm playing Xbox. I don't need to bring my unit with me. That's forward thinking. That is forward thinking. And I think about xCloud versus Stadia. One Stadia advantage was to just hit pause on one screen, go to the other. That's coming for xCloud. And then it's a matter of just, I'm downstairs on my mobile, going upstairs to my Xbox, and I'm playing in the exact same spot. All of that is coming. And there's that vision of the future is why, to your earlier question, Xbox content is so easy to cover because there's always something new. There's always something interesting. Sony stays quiet until they've got a lot of info drops. Then those info drops give great content, but they lead to bulky PlayStation shows and then very tepid and dry shows. And then Nintendo is just like, and I sure hope. And then 8 months later, there it is.
It is tough. I looked, and I think you're right on a lot of points there. I looked over the last several weeks of just like, what have we had to talk about for Nintendo? And it literally Monster Hunter Rise's launch.
Without voice chat.
Without voice chat. And that's literally it. And it just, it really is baffling at times, but that's neither here nor there. That's not for this discussion.
But it does speak to why we can create content as an Xbox show or a PlayStation show or a Nintendo show, and the ways to find that content. It does speak to those points.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, being an Xbox content creator right now is a good place to be in, because there's a sense of wonder and excitement around the brand that hasn't been there since the 360 era. And I think that as well as I do. You can just kind of feel it. And the crazy thing is, as you and I, I keep saying you and I have discussed because we talk pretty often on this stuff. But I think the crazy thing is, this is only just getting started. If people think that this is the peak, it's not even close. There's so much more to come. And it's just going to be really fascinating to watch. I honestly think over the next, I don't know, I want to hear your thoughts on this too, but I honestly think over the next, I would say by 2023, I said this before, by 2023 is when Game Pass is going to start to hit that full stride where it looks and feels like the Netflix of games. And what I mean by that is it's going to hit that stride where first party game delivery is hitting constantly every quarter, where you're also seeing the big third party deals intersperse, right? And I know we talked about this previously. We'll probably talk about it more on next Cast Co-op. But, if you think about where, even if Sony, from a PlayStation perspective, right now, at this moment, decided they're going to try and meet that model, they're going to try and do something like that, to get around that curve in 2 years just isn't going to happen. They're kind of behind the curve now. And I'm very curious, more even so than Xbox, because technology is where my career is. I see it. I understand it. So I can kind of see where Xbox is going and have been for a while in that regard. I don't know where PlayStation's going. Because as you said, it just feels like they're, it feels like they're a company that is very focused on having that brand, doubling down on the PS5 being you got to get this console, get the games on the console, and focus on content and IP, which is a strategy that's been working for them for a long time, and it's very profitable. But it's hard to imagine there comes a day where that doesn't change, at least to some degree, and it starts to evolve. And I don't know where PlayStation goes at that point.
It's certainly, when you look at the Microsoft slate, the big news to talk about on most Xbox shows for the past 2 to 3 years has been acquisitions and Game Pass, right? Acquisitions and Game Pass, but no games, which is interesting. And when I say no games, of course, I'm talking about like first party AAA IP.
Yeah.
Even their biggest concurrent play game, most concurrent play game in Sea of Thieves right now was a pretty weak launch, right?
Yep.
Sony does not have the studios to sustain a subscription model right now with regular new content. What they do have is incredible legacy content. And I would argue that at the moment, they have the best IP slate of the big three, in my opinion. And we got Horizon, you got God of War, you got Spider-Man, Ghost of Tsushima, which is a newer IP for them. Horizon's now going to be hitting its second one. I mean, they've just got incredible IP over there. Uncharted's on the back burner. There's a lot to celebrate. Gran Turismo as well. But what they don't have, seemingly, is what looks to be a regular cadence of releases after 2021. We don't know of anymore. I think we know God of War Ragnarok, and we know Gran Turismo, and then I think we're not sure.
Yeah,
right?
it's kind of the usual suspects.
Correct. And that usual suspects is a problem that Microsoft themselves had to combat when it was Gears, Halo, and Forza. Microsoft has doubled down on creating a space in which they are able to bring content old and new to gamers with regularity via the backward compat program, via forward compatibility with all the games they're producing right now, via xCloud, via FPS Boost to enhance those back compat games, but also create and cultivate IP. They have enough studios now where they can hit 1 to 2 games a quarter of a single, double, or AAA quality and be occupying mindshare, news. And that is the biggest difference. That is what's going to make or break them going forward. If they ever have to sell, they're going to make bank. If they want Game Pass to be on a PlayStation, there's an avenue for that at some point down the line. 100%. And they are software and cloud-based distribution company. The Xbox, the actual box, was never meant to make money. All the way back to its initial design, it was meant to bring people into an ecosystem. And it very much looks to me like what they're going to have with the regular cadence of releases starting in 2023 and beyond is just top-tier quality stuff. We think, right? We also thought that Crackdown 3 was going to be top tier quality stuff. Quantum Break was going to do what it did. And look, man, that was a great teaser for that game. And also I liked Crackdown 3. That was a fun little arcade game, but it definitely wasn't I liked it until the end, but the point actually is being well made here. Those were fun enough games, but they can't carry the weight load next to some of the better AAA titles. And so I'm really fascinated to see where this new model goes for them, because it is uncharted territory, forgive the pun. And I would really like to see PlayStation get with the times and not do, like, I really thought Stadia was going to link up with PlayStation and let that be a distribution model, because that would have saved both of them. And Sony doesn't need saving, but they do need prep for the future. And they've not shown us, at least from what we see at this point in time, that they are ready for the future.
Yeah.
So being a third gets you.
No, I know that's not a normal kind of one-on-one conversation topic, but we talk so much about it, and it's kind of your space that you live in, and a big part of my space too, for the site. So I figured we'd just kind of throw some comments around there because it's interesting, right? And I think it's a big part of what's going on in the industry right now. To your point about Stadia and Sony, obviously Amazon is the sleeping giant, if you will, in the gaming space right now. They just announced a new studio a couple weeks ago, led by Ubisoft, Rainbow Six Siege veterans, 4 of them actually. I mean, 4 executive veterans. So with their infrastructure and money, I mean, we'll see what kind of approach they take. But
it depends on if they decide to really care, because if they half-ass it the way Stadia did, they're going nowhere. And as we've seen Microsoft learn this lesson, we've seen PlayStation learn this lesson, we've seen everybody learn this lesson. If you don't have games, you're not selling anything, no matter how good your service is. And that's the trick.
That's true. And that's exactly why, to your point about service content and still waiting on first party titles from Xbox, that's exactly why we're starting to see the deals like Outriders, like
Mhm.
MLB The Show for Game Pass, because Game Pass is growing, it's getting bigger. You've got to supplement that with bigger and better content, which is
That's right.
exactly what we're saying.
We'll know they really care when they bring Call of Duty to the forefront. That's when we'll really know. And I don't see that happening because PlayStation really wants Call of Duty and they really double down on it.
Yeah.
But that switch was an industry shift when PlayStation pulled Call of Duty away from the 360. If they really want Game Pass to be the thing, Call of Duty will end up on that. And I don't see that part happening. I think they'll take the smaller approach in other ways.
Not in the short term.
Right.
And we know there was a rumor out this week. Now, it's unverified. It could just be someone blowing smoke. But I could actually see, to that point, the reason I bring it up, we didn't publish it because we don't publish unverified rumors. But Battlefield 6 launching on Game Pass. Now, I could see that because Xbox has already had all the marketing rights to Battlefield previously. We already have EA Play in Game Pass. And to the point you just made, the biggest competitor when it's hitting its stride to Call of Duty is Battlefield. So if you could say, yeah, PlayStation, you've got Call of Duty this year, we've got Halo Infinite and Battlefield 6 on day one in Game Pass. I know where I'd be.
I know where I'd be as well. And if I'm Microsoft, and that rumor certainly has a lot of logic behind it, right?
Yeah.
Not unsubstantiated. We could be totally wrong and find out tomorrow before this even publishes.
Yep.
However, there's a lot of logic there. And if I'm Microsoft, what I now have to be careful about is making sure that these big games that I'm getting day one are decent to great. No duds.
Yeah.
No duds. Cyberpunk on day one would have been bad.
Hey, calm down. Calm down. Let's pick a different horse to beat. Anthem. We'll say Anthem.
First of all, Anthem was great. And I'm playing Anthem without the jetpacks right now in Outriders and having a ball.
I mean, it's,
it's fun. It's fun. We talked about this on the most
it is
recent
fun.
Bitcast,
I'll give it that. It is fun. That's the word we'll use for it.
Yeah. And we'll let anybody that is listening, we talked about this exact thing on Bitcast.
We did. So we won't stay on it. But again, the point is content. And, we MLB The Show kind of made waves this week for obvious reasons. We've already talked about that. But again, going back to the point of Game Pass going forward, this is just the beginning. You're going to see bigger and better third-party deals ongoing. What they announced yesterday, I don't know if you saw this, but I found it relevant, is, Netflix is 15, 20 years into their service, right? And they're obviously a global giant now that everyone has. Did you see that they secured the rights to the 2 Knives Out sequels with the same director? Did you see how much they paid for those?
It was an exorbitant fee for both Daniel Craig and Ryan Johnson to be returning.
Yes, $450 million for 2 movies. And when one of the industry analysts that came out about movie industry, whatever, he said it's drop in the bucket for Netflix because the goal is content. Disney Plus is starting to ramp up. Prime's ramping up. There's more competition in that space. Netflix has to spend the money. And that's what we're going to see from Xbox. It's not the same, obviously, equivalent because Netflix is much further ahead in terms of investment and whatnot. But you will start to see bigger investments from Xbox and those third-party agreements. And it's going to be, again, fun to watch.
The Netflix thing came up on the most recent episode of XEP, and it's an apt comparison, but it's interesting because Netflix in the last few years has only been losing content compared to what they've been adding. They've added a few good shows, and in my mind, I'm like Lost in Space, The Witcher seasons 1 and now 2, but they lost the Marvel deal. HBO Max is crushing it.
HBO Max
right now.
Is killing it, yeah.
And that's my bread and butter. I'm a DC guy, and I love a lot of what they're doing, and I love their pandemic philosophy of putting movies out there.
Yep. I finished Snyder Cut, by the way. It was awesome.
Good. I'm really glad to hear you liked it. Really glad to hear you liked it, man. Part 6 is where it's at, though, right?
I'm telling you, I liked it. I liked it a lot. But then I like some of those DC movies that people don't like. We're way off topic now, but hell,
that's okay.
Like right. Batman vs Superman, like the original cut was the director's cut of that movie I really like.
So good. Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. And the idea of longer films is kind of why
I love
some of those issues
films.
happen. So do I, especially when they're streamable, right?
Yeah, of course.
But the Netflix problem is they don't have enough homegrown content that has mass appeal. They've got some really great original programming.
Yeah.
but not mass appeal, not marketability that's comparable to anything Marvel that Disney can put
Or
out on Disney
Godzilla and
Plus.
Kong. Look what we saw out of that.
Absolutely. Godzilla, Kong, and the Mortal Kombat, you have Suicide Squad, you have Snyder Cut. Like, they are just hitting it on HBO Max, getting people in. Netflix is in trouble, really and truly. So they need to spend that money. This is the exact same problem that we've seen Sony and Microsoft have at various points in their careers. Do we have the content? If not, we need to spend the money to get something there. This Knives Out deal reminds me of when Rise of the Tomb Raider was exclusive. Remember that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
that was weird. Now, nobody really cared. Nobody really cared.
it-
I don't think people are going to be signing up to watch Knives Out 2 and 3, even though those movies are great. Even though Rise of the Tomb Raider is great. I'm literally playing through it right now, playing through it again on Xbox Series X and loving it. But I don't think people show up for that kind of a movie or film or game.
No, you're right. I don't think that moved the bar. But I think, I mean, Halo is Halo. It's its own entity, right? So, and that's first party. So we'll leave that to the side. But I do believe, assuming, to your point, assuming Battlefield 6 delivers on the old school Battlefield modern era shooter that we all adored and love, right? That we haven't really seen since Battlefield 4. If it actually delivers and works and launches well, that would be a huge bomb for Game Pass to get.
It would be nuts, but they would have to clear a few hurdles here. The game's got to be good to help sell, right? You got to have good. So I would imagine if they're in talks, and you'd have to imagine there's been a conversation already, right? The EA Play is partnered there. Battlefield needs an audience.
Of course,
they've already been talks, but the game needs to be great, and Microsoft needs to have a seal of approval on that on some level. Moreover, they need to talk release dates. We are not going to put Battlefield out next to Halo Infinite. What a travesty that would have been. See Titanfall, right? And then it's a matter of, okay, are your servers ready for the potential of 18 million players? Like, are you ready for that? Because that is what did Outriders in. Outriders had 100,000 players on Steam alone, like concurrent. That's big. But the idea of having an install base of potentially millions right out the gate is bad news bears if you are not ready for it. So you got to be ready so you don't damn your game into oblivion by accident. You know, that's the biggest.
Well, and Battlefield hasn't traditionally launched well to begin with. They usually have bugs and issues at launch. I mean, Battlefield 4 was broken for months. People forget that now because it's an amazing game, but it was screwy as hell at launch.
It was, and they don't need that press. They do not need that press when they're trying to take on Call of Duty and they are going to and Halo. However, they should position it where they should take the Battlefield and Halo storming Game Pass approach. Like, we're doing this together attitude, not contrary. Like, we got Titanfall if you like that, we got Battlefield if you like that. And then they accidentally compete with each other. They could market this super well as a big win for both of them.
Yeah, 100%. Make them about a month apart, market it, advertise it. Yeah, I agree with you. You. This is a whole different topic we got onto, but I like it.
We're having perspectives on the industry with Ains.
It's almost like we're chatting about it. It's crazy.
Right. It's weird.
So let's segue that then into, because one of the things I really like to do on here, and you know me well enough, is talk about the industry coverage, not the industry, but the coverage of the industry.
Okay.
And what we see, because you know what we do at SG. Know what you do at XCP and the way you cover it. And, that's why you've been on our show a bunch of times and we are doing a show together now, is because I respect that. And, I think you go about it the right way. Now, you know what I mean by that, of course. So, the Twitterverse, as we like to call it in the gaming community, is a nothing but a drop in the bucket of the gaming industry. I mean, it's not even a drop in the bucket, right? It's invisible, basically. However, it does have some impact in the sense of, that's where a lot of the gaming industry communication takes place. It's where a lot of the executives communicate with their fans. A lot of the studios communicate with their fans. So when you look at, just get your own perspective, your own thoughts here on when you look at how a lot of modern gaming media covers the industry. Because again, you've got journalistic roots, so you know all the ins and outs of this. What are your thoughts there when you look at major sites and you look at, and it's not even just video games, right? It's kind of multiple industries, but still focusing on gaming. What do you think about when you see uh, Kotaku publish a garbage article? Or do you think that we actually get gaming journalism anymore? Or is that few and far between? What do you think?
That is a huge topic.
Yeah, I mean it is huge, and I kind of weaved in and out
You
there,
weaved
so
it, yeah.
apologies, but I
So
think you know what I'm getting at.
the core question is where gaming journalism is right now. Is that
Yeah,
kind of the starting point there? Because
let's
the
start
other
there.
stuff, where how the big three communicated, we covered that in Cast Co-op a little bit as well for any interested listener.
Yeah, what I was meaning to say, and I apologize there. What I was
Good.
meaning to say is that despite Twitter being a small percentage of the gaming community, a very small percentage, there is some level of communication between the companies, the studios, the fan base there that takes place on that platform. More so than I would say Instagram, more so than I would say Facebook. Seems that Twitter, for whatever reason, seems to be where more of the gaming community conversation takes place. So, yeah. So kind of your thoughts on how that affects gaming journalism is probably the bigger question.
Well, gaming journalism is no different than standard journalism in that it has suffered greatly in a world where communication is instant and communication is free. And so because of that, the need for integrity and patience for a reporter is strained to the max. Clicks make money. The hot story is what sells, even if it's not true. And you can look at any major media news outlet in the last 10 years and see that their news is constantly using inflammatory words. CNN does this, Fox does this, ABC does this, everything. You look at their 24-hour news cycles, things will become bigger than they perhaps are or would have been in terms of what you needed to know based on where you lived in your ecosystem, what you did and what you covered. But they turned that into a 24-hour news cycle because it became profitable. And what they did to fill time, and this is the journalistic endeavors, what they did to fill time was they brought on panelists to offer opinion in between the news. That had such an interesting disparity that they ended up kind of merging them and making one look like the other. And in doing so, they kind of monopolized the news cycle and the timing for this. And they had to adjust the wording that they used to start stories to get people to click and engage, because that was how advertisers were paying their bills. That's how they were paying their bills, through advertisers. Gaming industry is no different than that. The amount of journalists that exist in the gaming industry that I am truly aware of, 100% journalists, is less than 5. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking Jason Schreier, who has his own history of inflammatory statements, Jeff Grubb, who is extremely capable, and I've welcomed on XEP before and everything else, but he's a leaker, which probably makes things a little bit different with his relationships with certain companies as well.
And he's built a reputation for that now, which has helped him get that notoriety, which is kind of what we're talking about.
Correct. And I'm thinking maybe Patrick Klepek at one point, and to a lesser extent, there are a few others out there, maybe Ryan McCaffrey or whatnot over at IGN. But the problem with those gentlemen that I've listed is that they also have to pay their own bills. And that can come into a territory where they need to make opinion pieces, make appearances, where it's not all going to be factual, but rather speculative. And that's the difference between being inflammatory for clicks or speculating. There is a difference in that. Yeah. If you have an article written about something Jeff Grubb said where he is speculating, that's not him lying for effect or creating a YouTube headline with all caps or anything silly, that some of the behaviors that you and I have talked about before.
Huge new gaming news.
Huge news. It can't always be huge news, guys. It can't, if it's all caps, huge news every time, that's just standard news. Okay. By definition. But those get clicks and excitement. And I often lament, and this is probably a woe is me story, but I'll just talk about myself here. I sometimes get frustrated as a content creator when I feel like I'm putting out something that is thoughtful and engaging and meant to be analytical. And then the guy next to me is doing that all caps clickbaity thing and tripling, quadrupling, or eclipsing the amount of people that are listening because they've got huge news in caps and they're quoting something 3 times over and then speculating beyond that. It's an interesting journey. But Greg Miller of Kind of Funny, who in their own right grows their audience in unique ways, but he always said, grow the way you want smartly to cultivate the audience that you want. And that is how I've kind of made peace with that on my personal side. Is I don't want people that are there to dump on PlayStation or to have huge news every time, because I don't subscribe to that mentality myself, and I'd be faking it if I did. And so it's tiring. And that's a long-winded answer to your idea of journalism, but I don't see a lot of journalists out there, and I've watched the industry shift alongside of other news industries. It's not just gaming that does this.
No, it's not just gaming, but I think, our perspectives are pretty well aligned there. And it, we say perspectives, right? But those are facts. I mean, that's the nature of what we're talking about right now when you talk about gaming media. And I think even the, I don't know if you've witnessed this or kind of experienced this as well, but even the whole, especially here in the US, with as toxic, for lack of a better word, as divisive, probably a better word. There you go. As divisive as it got, in the fall with the election and the kind of left versus right, blue versus red, blah, blah, blah. You started to see some of that kind of creep into the gaming community, where it's like, well, this site's fake news, or this site's, this, or this site's this, and the gaming media can't be trusted, and the media can't be this. But you've got the same people saying that, who, of course, are just spreading nonsense in their own right. And it's a weird thing to witness, kind of that degradation, because I grew up reading gaming magazines and just loving every ounce of content I could get about the gaming industry. And I just really always appreciated those people who went out and spoke to the developers and went out and spoke to the publishers, or provided insight on how a game was made and what the engine was. And, all these interesting things that are far, far more interesting to talk about than the nonsense we see on a daily basis.
Well, that's one of the ideas in there you're kind of touching on is this one versus the other for clicks, that competitive nature that comes in.
Team-based.
And yeah, very much so. But I think about the pressure that I feel as a content creator on a very small level to try to grow, right? And try to grow versus the guy who's using the all caps or whatnot. And there were a lot of ways to make this MLB The Show on Game Pass Day One headline. And I really struggled with it because I didn't want it to look inflammatory. But that urge to do so, to get a few more listeners, was in the back of my mind. And if that's what's hitting me, for somebody who does this strictly as a hobby with no pursuits of a career, imagine if you're the guy whose career and whose children's dinner depends on your article getting traffic.
Yep.
That's difficult. I think about the IGN crew a lot. They used to be strictly news. I don't believe that they are strictly news in any way, shape, or form now. That is not to say their content is bad, right? They're just the biggest gaming site out there, so they're an easy target to talk about. But they've had to adapt with content creation. And if I feel the draw, goodness only knows how they felt the draw, particularly when they had the Kind of Funny crew leave and then do it better for a little while, when they had other people around them doing it better and they had to adapt and shift. And that adapting and shifting oftentimes leads to good people going wayward. And I think that's the element. That's why we succumb to this us versus them mentality in politics, when in reality, the issues are what should be debated, not the people. Yeah. It happens in social issues when it should be the issue, the social issue, and the problem being debated instead of the person behind the issue. And there's a lot of that tends to happen. And I think it's human nature, and it bleeds into gaming in the worst ways. And quite similarly, Ains, I think the gaming community is extremely powerful and capable of doing incredible, amazing things. And we've seen that with fundraisers. We've seen that with different social efforts to remove stigmas. I'm thinking about an EA thing where they had a shooting at a Madden tournament. Then the next weeks later, there was a huge amount of fundraising being done to help stem and fix that. And there's a lot of, fix is not the right word, goodness gracious. But my point, I think, is being heard. There's a lot of good that gamers can do when they rally around each other. Extra Life every year. You do this. You've sold season gaming stuff for charity with no thought of yourself. And you and many others have done that. Today I purchased a shirt for Andrea Renee. Andrea Strong was what it was, because she went through a huge time. People like to rally around good causes, and the gaming community is capable of a lot of good. And it's the bad news that tends to get the traction.
Yeah. And that, I think, you're absolutely right. Agree with all that. And I think it's that dichotomy that always gets me. right? Like there's a weird dichotomy because I don't know if those two audiences are the same or if there's this weird mix of the two within the gaming community where people can't where they almost compartmentalize, right? Like they want to be part of the good things. They want to rally around people. They do good work, charity work, or support others. And then there's this other side of that same person. And you know what I'm getting at here, where it's just like day in, day out, partaking in negativity. And it just seems like a very, I don't know if there's no self reflection that's happening there, or they compartmentalize it, or they don't see it. I don't know what it is. It's just very strange to witness on a daily basis.
It's exhausting. It's exhausting.
It is.
When do they have time? And I'm saying they in a vague term, but when do they have time to play games? When? And I don't know, because I prefer playing games to talking about.
The joke is
them.
always that they play Twitter, right? So. But it is, it's weird.
It's really weird.
Yeah. Anyway, I know we've talked about that a lot. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that because I know it's got to be frustrating for someone who loves gaming, does a solid show, has journalistic background. I feel you're probably one of those people that, like me, just see stuff on a daily basis where it's just like you just want to bang your head against a wall. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, you can do so much better than this.
Big time.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get back to XCP, man. So we talked prior to the show about neither of these things being our career, right? Where our lives don't depend on this. This is, what we enjoy doing. And there's a certain passion that I think comes out in it because of that, which I love. I love hearing in you. I think we deliver, and another, there's a few other shows I think do the same thing. But what would you like to see XCP grow into? Do you have like a long-term ambition? Do you have long-term plans for it to change or evolve? Or do you really just think, are you at a place where it's like, it's bigger than I thought it would ever be when I started this? If I can continue to grow, fantastic. But, I'm just kind of riding the wave type thing.
It's a question that I go back and forth on a lot. I am riding the wave. Sometimes the waves are, the seas, as it were, are very calm, and there's nothing really happening on that front. Maybe I'm busy at work and I don't have time to put in the effort to get more guests on the show, because the guests I bring on are meant to expand our knowledge of the industry. Yeah. So that means it's not just content creators or our buddies or things like that. And that has been difficult because I'll be on other people's shows and then they'll be like, yeah, can I come on yours? And I'm like, not really the point of XCP. It's a different thing, right? It's a different approach. And so that's been just an interesting journey to go on. But when I think about where I want to be, at the end of the day, it is a hobby, but I want it to be something I'm respected for. I've had the good fortune to guest on several shows that are kind of in that top tier category. Kind of Funny's Xcast. I got to do that once. I want to do it again, but I don't know how to. And this is me being 100% honest to you and the audience listening. Do I campaign for that? like, what do I do? I would like to be back on. It was happenstance that I got to be on the first time, and it was a joy. I've gotten to be on DLC with Jeff Kanata, Player One podcast with Chris Johnston and the EGM crew. Those are milestones for me. I would love to be on Unlocked. I've been on there, or I've not been on. My question made it on with my video question, right? Yeah. I would love to be on Ryan McCaffrey's show. He's been on mine, but there's a different step there. I want to do these things, not because I want a career in it. And oftentimes they tend to focus on people that want careers, but I want to do it because these are people I look up to. These are people I enjoy. And I would like to feel a sense of camaraderie with them. If that makes sense. It might seem very silly, but I've always been somebody who had heroes in his mind, right? I've always looked up to different people within whatever realm I'm in, whether it was in sports, playing soccer, being a journalist in soccer, whether it was teaching heroes or whatnot. And I would love to guest on other shows more often that have similar mind shares. I don't enjoy being on. I've been on several shows that quadruple my audience, but their intended audience is vitriolic, or it's this is so good and they're so bad. And I have no interest in that. I would much rather not go on those shows. And I'm uncomfortable on the one or two times where I've kind of accidentally ended up in those places.
I've been in that place several times. Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah, I don't enjoy. Yeah, I do not enjoy it, but I want to grow. I would like to pie in the sky. I would like to be invited to E3 on my own. You know, the idea of I would love for Xbox to notice XEP, as it were, and you know, be invited to one of their shows or whatnot. Not for any reason other than I enjoy the brand and the games behind them, and I want to meet the people that make them. I love doing that. But it is not an end all be all. If I don't get the free code or get the call to go on a show or get the invite, I'm still having fun making XEP and sharing that journey with the people who listen to it. It's not one dependent upon the other. If that line of thinking track, am I making sense there?
You make perfect sense, because it's exactly, again, a lot of parallels to where I've been and what I do. With season gaming, very similar. Is if it doesn't happen, it's not a big deal, but it would love for it to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also, you talked about campaigning, and I think going back to the whole Twitterverse, one of the things we see pretty often is self, people kind of campaigning for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And really pushing their own image and really pushing themselves. And I don't know about you. I really struggle with that. I'm not good at it. I think it's disingenuous. It's not something that I enjoy doing. And that's why you don't see me do it. And another sad fact I feel like, though, is like those people who do that and shoot their shot every single day, pushing, is eventually some of those land. And it's like, well, maybe I should have done that, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Because I don't see you kind of doing that either. Obviously promote your show, which is obvious, right? But
sure,
you know what I'm referring to.
I do. And I struggle with that myself, because on the one hand, in a world of content creation, you do need to be able to promote yourself.
Yeah.
It took me 4 or 5, 6 months before I understood the elevator pitch of XEP, before I knew how to sell it to somebody. And if you can't sell your show in 30 seconds, then you don't know what your true vision is. If somebody asked me to sell Cast Co-op right now after episode 1, I don't know that I would be able to reliably and comfortably spit out a 30-second thing. Promoting yourself is very important in the content creation world. It just is. But the shooting your shot is a very different thing than badgering and campaigning.
Very true.
Until someone capitulates. There are 2 shows that I desperately want to be on because I have listened to them religiously. They are shows that I love and adore, and I just want to be on. But if I bother those hosts enough to where they just say like, fine, screw it, or they block me, then I have failed on both realms of that coin, or both sides of that coin. Similarly, on occasion, and I'm thinking about one of the hosts of the show, I do reach out to this person every few months. Hey, would love to have you on XEP. Would love to join you on this if the time is right or whatnot. But how often is too often? I don't know that answer.
Yeah.
I struggle with that as well. Sometimes I'm just not there. I'm just not ready. And other times, like, all right, do this. But imposter syndrome is real. An overused word in our culture is anxiety. But I do have it for real. Like there's a difference between people who are anxious and people who have anxiety. I do suffer that anxiety, and I do get very worried about it. On the other hand, sometimes you just got to try. And if you fail, okay, you move on. I have been rejected far more than I've been accepted in terms of XEP guests in both directions. But the best ones are when they're polite and like, hey, Luke, I appreciate you asking. I can't do it. This isn't going to happen. Or if I'm rejected for a code and they respond and they're super polite about it, that means the world. And I try to think about how courteous it is that somebody takes the time to politely say no or decline an invitation. And I try to do the same thing for others if I'm not able to do it. And I do the same thing in other directions too. Hey, we're making this game. We would love for you to play it and talk about it on the show. If it's not right for me or it wouldn't make sense for my audience, I tell them like, hey, I don't know jack about your turn-based strategy game, super 4X game. I'm not the right guy for you. And I try to do that same courtesy there, because most of the time people are good and people do try to do right. And I try to honor and keep that in mind. And when I fail to do that, I tend to work that over my brain too often. It bums me out.
No, I'm with you. As you can imagine, with running a site, there's a lot of requests. So I've put out a lot of requests that haven't gotten responses. Same thing. And there's a lot of requests that come in to look at games and, publish something or talk about it. And it's, I do the same thing. It's like I feel an obligation to respond, right? I don't like not responding because I know what it feels like to not get a response. It's very simple. So even if I can't cover it or no one on the team can cover it, it's, sorry, we don't have the bandwidth. It is what it is. The other thing you touched on there, which I think is funny, went to E3 2018, 2019, both times with Bert, who used to be on SG with me, and is a bunch of our older videos and bitcasts and stuff. And we joked around. He is one of those people who, I'm very similar to you in the sense of I've followed this industry my whole life. There's people in the industry I respect and kind of really love to say hi to if I ever see them in person, right? So E3 is like a playground for that because I got to meet so many cool people and say hi and get pictures with people that have made games like Ed Boon, Mortal Kombat, met him, Rod Ferguson, all those guys, right? Whereas he is very much like, yeah, there's Ed Boon. He's over there. I was like, you want to get a picture with him? No, I'm good. He just doesn't really faze him. It's just another person. But one of the things we joked about, I forget who it was now, and I don't want to name names anyway, but there was someone we had met who's well known in the industry and just came off really poorly. Just really didn't care for the person. And it became a running joke with us of never meet your heroes. Because you have this image of your head of what that person's going to be like. And it's just simple math at a point where all those people you have this image of, they're not going to be like you expect them to be in real life. Have you had an instance like that where, there's been someone you've respected, someone that, in the industry wanted to talk to, et cetera, et cetera. And when you actually did get to, you came away like, oof, it's not what I thought it was going to be.
Yes, but
you don't have to name names.
You're good, but I will spare names, but I will also shift it to a different entertainment industry entirely. As a journalist, I met many professional athletes, millionaires, who played at the top. Interesting. It was interesting. It was really cool to be like, oh, this guy plays on the U.S. national team. This guy plays for this team, that team. And I met tons of incredible athletes. And in Major League Soccer, the lowest paid guy would make $50K a year. The highest paid could be making 20 million per year, right? Yeah. Athletes doing what they do. And I did meet several of my heroes, and some of them were absolutely heroic. And one who was one of my top tier people said I played like this guy. People said I acted like this guy. And then I met him. He was a total dick. Like total. And like we like heated exchanges on Twitter, heated exchanges on the phone. It was interesting, and it was cool because bumping elbows, like I had to, if you have a go at me, Mr. Millionaire Man, I'm going to have to defend and go back. And I did. And that was an interesting, cool parallel. And there is a lot of validity to the idea of don't meet your heroes.
Yeah.
There's also, and more importantly, the idea that these are just people.
They are just people. Yes.
And they have bad days. They can act like total jerks. I know I've been misunderstood and been a total jerk many times in my life.
I think you're a jerk all the time, but
thanks. Go to hell. My heart is not like that, right? But people have seen the worst of me on a bad day, bad moment. And I try to keep that in mind for others. Now, when you have a systemic pattern, that might be a little bit different. But yeah, don't meet your heroes is a safety clause. And I admire those who are able to adhere to it. But if I see somebody that I admire and look up to and I have the ability to talk to them, I do. A wonderful story from E3 2019. We were leaving the Microsoft Theater. We just finished the E3 conference. And so we were walking out. And I saw Dana Sessions. He is the was the community manager for Gears of War. Always running their social media, always doing the live streams. Yep. And I just saw him. And like, to me, that was a really big deal because I watched him and listened to him all the time. I communicated with him about what I liked about Gears, didn't all that stuff. This was when Gears 5 was about to come out. And I just said, hey, are you Dana? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, I watch you all the time on Mixer and on Twitch. And I talked and that was a really fun moment. I had the same thing happened that entire E3 with probably 20 different people. I met Joseph Staten.
Yep.
But I met him because he was on the Crackdown 3 videos. Me and 6 others were really excited about those videos. And we really liked Crackdown 3. As flawed as it was, I'm not pretending it's some God's gift to gaming, but he was in these videos with the director of the game, making it for people like me who cared. And when I saw him, not realizing Joseph Staten's pedigree at the time, which is all the more amusing because I have every Halo book possible over there, one of which he's written.
Yeah, he kind of has a nice history. Yeah,
he does. But I knew him from Crackdown 3, and I said to him, I was like, "Hey, are you guys the Crackdown 3 team?" And you could just see it, Joseph Staten and the director, whose name I'm afraid I can't pronounce. We were just like. And I was like, no, I wanted to tell you guys, I really love your game. I really appreciate what you guys did there. I know you got a lot of flack from people, but I love just going around finding orbs, and you gave me some great memories. And they exploded with smiles. They took pictures. They thanked me. They told me a little secret about something that was coming up in the game, the glider, the jetpack glider that you could get for free. They're like, we got a little something for you guys, a little bit. And I was just like, dude, that's what the best parts were. Those were my heroes. Those are my hero. Like, those people make games. And when I get to have a developer on the show, whether it's on XEP, I mean, whether they make little twin stick games or they make the biggest and greatest games like Ori and the Will of the Wisps or something in my mind grandiose, it's just cool to hear them talk about their craft and be celebrated. But it's not evangelical. You know, sometimes we evangelize Phil Spencer.
Yes.
Dude's genuinely just nice. He's
Yeah.
generally a great businessman, as you have to be, and he is a gamer. That's cool. That's cool. But he's no more angelic than Jim Ryan is devilish. You know, they're both doing their jobs. They're both people. They have families, and how they communicate is important.
Yeah, no, 100%. You nailed it. I'm the same way as you. I still I'd rather meet them and have a discussion if possible than to think, no, I don't want to meet them because I've got this vision of them in my head and I want that to remain. You know what I mean? I'd rather know them how they really are. And I've told the story many times, but one of the ones that sticks out to me is just meeting Cory Barlog in 2018, right after God of War, because the game launched. It was at E3 the following month, and dude was just, you saw him in the video. He got kind of well known because when he had the video of when the reviews of God of War came out, and he was crying because it was obviously, one of the highest rated games, I think now close to ever. And
it is the best game ever, for the record.
No, but it's up there. It's up there. It is an incredible game. No one can deny that. Well, you can if you want. You'd be wrong. But it, you could just see the joy in him of the years of work and I'm sure stress and everything else that went into helping deliver that game. And so, you kind of got a sense for the kind of person he was from that, right? But it was so joyful to me when I met him in real life. He obviously has no idea who I am. It's not like I knew him previously. You know what I mean? Season Gaming was a non-known outlet. It still is, I mean, for the most part. But you know what I mean? It's just like, he took time, talked to me. He was super happy when I told him how much I loved the game, took a picture. And it's just, those are the kind of people, those are the kind of experiences that stick with you. And it's coming up on 3 years ago. And anytime someone asks about something like that, that's the one that jumps to the top of my head. Because it just, because of what you said, it was just a joyful experience at that moment. And they helped create something that I love so much.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, it's awesome. All right, man. So I've got one tough question for you, and I don't know how you're going to answer this. So put some thought into it. But why would you ever do a show with Joseph Moran? Why would that ever happen?
I'm a big believer in karma. Ains. I'm a big believer in karma. And in my younger life, I made a lot of mistakes. I didn't treat people well. I wasn't a good man. I wasn't a nice man. I wasn't a good boyfriend. There were a lot of things I did wrong. And as I get older, I'm trying to correct a lot of those mistakes. But honest to God, I'd make... he's just the worst. He's just the worst. Like, oh, I got Outriders code. Oh, look at me. And then, like, what happened? He had an Outriders code, but it was in his spam. You're too dumb to check his spam folder. Fool. Anywho,
look at this.
He's really the worst. But charity is what it is, and I try to do good deeds in life, and so I am his friend, kind of. to a point.
Yeah, I've already recorded his episode, so he can't even respond either. You're golden at this point.
He wouldn't know what to say. He wouldn't know what to say. Like, what are you gonna do there? I love Joe for a lot of reasons. He's also like one of those friends that I hope is my friend 10 years from now, but I will constantly be on him to be a better person, and vice versa. He would do the same thing. Those are good friends to have.
Yeah, absolutely. You need friends who can be honest with you, like truly honest with you.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference, and a lot of people have friends who they think they're honest with, myself included. I mean, no one's, but there are those friends where you can really have a serious conversation with. Everybody needs those.
Mm-hmm. He's ugly. I will say that. Like, he's ugly. Just an ugly man. It's like, come on, man. Like, get a haircut. Watch the thing. Like, maybe in the next trophy room, don't use your camera. I don't know, like something.
Make it an audio only show.
That's a good idea. You should mention that to him. I'll mention that Ains thinks you should.
I don't know what I started here. I apologize, audience. But anyone who watches, both of us knows we're joking around, of course.
You ever see people online that don't know we're joking?
They don't know.
Like,
they respond
jump in,
what
like,
are you doing?
hey,
what's going on?
That's really mean. It's like, no, he deserves it.
Just double down on it.
Yeah.
No, he's literally the worst. Like,
he's absolutely the worst.
Yeah, I've met a lot of people. He's terrible.
Yeah, he's the worst. He doesn't wear his mask,
Anyway, man, no, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, dude, as I knew it would, of course. So what can we look for? Anything you want to shout out? Obviously, we kind of talked through everything, but anything you want to kind of call out before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, I'll say keep an eye on XEP over the next few weeks. I'm arranging interviews, some of which I'm very excited about. One of them with takethis.org. Some of the people that work on.
Not to interrupt you, sorry. I just spoke to someone who was on one of their panels and published on our site one of their videos for the Good in Gaming initiative that they did on addressing toxicity towards women.
Brilliant. Yeah. And that's one of the theses is like, what does Take This do? How do they improve the gaming industry? And that's very early in the scheduling process. But there's a game coming out in the next few days in the next few weeks. I'll have Scott Brody on and a few others. I mean, XCP is a place for interviews where I want to spotlight developers, actors, and whatnot. Sometimes they come together last minute, and sometimes it's a much more long, drawn out process. But for anybody listening that doesn't already subscribe to XCP, it would mean the world. YouTube.com/Xbox Expansion Pass. Drop a review or a thumbs up on whatever platform you're able to. It means the world when you guys check out a small show like mine. And if it's not for you, that's okay too. And I really think it's important that we remind people that you don't have to listen to or follow every little thing to be supportive, but kind words go a long way.
Fair enough, man. So it's been a pleasure. Obviously, we'll be in touch. We'll be doing shows for the foreseeable future. So
yeah,
we'll be talking here in a couple of days. But anyway, thanks again for tuning into Industry Perspectives. It's always fun doing these episodes. If there's someone that you would like, one thing I wanted to ask the audience as this has grown a bit is there someone you'd like me to try and speak with or try to have on the show and have a discussion with? Let me know. There's a lot of people I still have on my list to get a hold of. I'm working on same thing as Luke. I'm working on some other things that I hope come together. I don't want to announce anything yet because nothing's final, but some things in the work and looking forward to future chats. So that was Industry Perspectives with Mr. Luke Lohr, the Insipid Ghost, our favorite guy who survived the fallout. Until next time.